In the grand, sweeping narrative of the Second World War, filled with tales of battlefield heroism and strategic genius, countless stories have been lost to the silence of history. Among the most overlooked are those of the women who, caught in the maelstrom of conflict, found themselves behind the barbed wire of enemy camps. These were not just soldiers, but nurses, pilots, clerks, resistance fighters, and ordinary civilians whose lives were irrevocably altered. Theirs is a story of quiet courage, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable hardship. In the faded photographs and forgotten letters, we find the echoes of their voices, waiting to be heard. This is the story of the hidden lives of female prisoners of war. As the war engulfed the globe, thousands of women serving in various capacities were captured. On the battlefields of Eastern Europe, Soviet women, who fought and served alongside men as combat soldiers, medics, and anti-aircraft gunners, fell into German hands. They were often sent to notorious camps like Ravensbrück, a concentration camp primarily for women. In the Pacific, the fall of Singapore in 1942 led to the capture of hundreds of Allied nurses, primarily British and Australian. They were herded into makeshift camps across Sumatra and Borneo, facing a different, yet equally brutal, reality under Japanese occupation. The stories are numerous and varied. American Army nurses captured in the Philippines, British special agents caught behind enemy lines in France, and countless civilian women deemed a threat by occupying forces. Each woman's journey into captivity was unique, yet they all shared a common fate. Stripped of their freedom, they were now prisoners of war, their futures uncertain, their survival dependent on a strength they had yet to discover. Camps bore names that would later become infamous, places where the rules of war were often ignored, and the protections of the Geneva Convention proved to be a distant, fragile promise. The dawn in a prison camp brought no comfort, only the stark reality of another day to endure. The routine was monotonous and grueling. A meager breakfast, often little more than a piece of stale bread, and a cup of weak ersatz coffee, was followed by hours of forced labor or sheer, mind-numbing idleness. Hunger was a constant companion, a gnawing ache that overshadowed every moment. Rations were scarce and nutritionally barren, leading to widespread malnutrition and disease. In these conditions, maintaining a sense of dignity was a daily battle. Hygiene was a luxury few could afford. With little water and no soap, women improvised, using ashes to wash their worn-out clothes and sharing slivers of soap saved from Red Cross, parcels that rarely arrived. Yet, in the midst of this deprivation, an extraordinary spirit of community flourished. Women formed what they called camp families, pooling their resources, sharing their last crumbs of food, and offering emotional support. They mended each other's clothing, nursed the sick with herbal remedies foraged from the camp grounds, and shared stories of home to keep hope alive. They wrote in hidden diaries on scraps of paper, composed poetry, and organized secret concerts, creating a world of their own within the confines of the wire. It was in these small acts of defiance and compassion that they preserved not just their lives, but their very humanity. The relationship between the prisoners and their captors was complex and fraught with peril. The Geneva Convention, which outlined the humane treatment of prisoners of war, was often a meaningless document. For female prisoners, its protections were even more tenuous. While some guards, perhaps out of a sense of military duty or personal conscience, treated the women with a degree of respect, many others were cruel and indifferent. The women endured verbal abuse, neglect, and the constant threat of violence. In the Japanese camps in Asia, the discipline was notoriously harsh, and any perceived infraction could be met with severe punishment. In German-run camps like Ravensbrück, the conditions were deliberately designed to dehumanize and break the prisoners' spirits. Visits from the International Red Cross were rare and often staged. The camp authorities would clean up a small section of the camp, provide better food for a single day, and intimidate the prisoners into silence, presenting a facade of compliance to the inspectors. Yet, even under such tight control, the women found ways to resist. They smuggled out information through coded messages in letters or passed notes to sympathetic civilians. Their hidden diaries, many of which survived the war, provide an unflinching, first-hand account of the truth, a powerful counter-narrative to the official reports. It was a silent, daily war for the truth, fought not with weapons, but with courage, memory, and an unbreakable will to bear witness. As Allied forces advanced, the liberation of these camps brought an end to their physical confinement, but the psychological scars would remain for a lifetime. When the war finally ended and the world began to rebuild, the stories of these women largely faded from public memory in the celebrations of victory. Their quiet suffering was overshadowed. Many returned home not to parades, but to a society that struggled to understand what they had endured. Their experiences were often dismissed or considered too harrowing to speak of. Unlike their male counterparts, few received official recognition for their sacrifice. There were no grand monuments erected in their honor, no celebrated memoirs lining bookstore shelves. Their courage was a private one, their resilience a story shared only in hushed tones, if at all. For decades, their history remained hidden in dusty archives and personal collections. But their legacy is not one of victimhood, it is one of profound strength, solidarity, and the enduring power of the human spirit. To remember them is not just to honor the past, but to understand the true cost of war. It is to recognize that in the darkest of times, ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things. By telling their stories, by speaking their names, we ensure that their light, once hidden behind barbed wire, continues to shine. A quiet but powerful reminder of the dignity they never lost.